Hello everyone again, and I hope everyone is keeping fine and safe in this challenging time of the COVID war. Please kindly let me bring my PowerPoint file. Okay, just let me say about my background so the project is going to be clear about what it is about. I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at Queen's University, Belfast. And in the background, I'm an architect and landscape urbanist. But at the moment, I'm working about the age and gender inclusiveness in city centers. And I'm actually making a comparative study of Tehran and Belfast. And today's presentation is based off my most recent findings and also the procedure I'm in. However, as I explained earlier, because of the pandemic, it has been affected because it's based on site situation of the city center. However, as you know, the city do not look like cities these days. So if I just want to say about my short abstract, you see that I have highlighted some of the keywords here. So it is about the inclusiveness in city centers, and it is more or less a comparative study of two case study cities. And it is studying the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of users and their environments in the city center, and how these can be answered in the most inclusive sense. More or less, by this comparative study, I'm trying to find out how the contextual differences of the two cities of Tehran and Belfast can be reflected in achieving the age and gender inclusiveness. So by now, I have identified 8 categories, which I have highlighted here, that shows that we have some similarities of the functions in 2 different case studies. However, how they are interpreted in each context and how they can positively and negatively affect the inclusiveness in the city center might differ. And by my on-site study, I'm trying to explore these aspects. So just a short and brief introduction about my case studies. The first is Tehran and the second is Belfast. Tehran is the capital of Iran and it is located in Middle East. So some of you might not be very familiar about Middle East by some Middle Eastern countries. So I would like to say that in the Middle Eastern countries, you might see very different weathers during the summer and winters. And Tehran is more or less located here. So we have the mountainous areas all around these types. And here we have the deserts and dry lands. So as you see here, Tehran has a semi-arid weather conditions. So in summers, we reach the temperature of 40, even 45 degrees. And in winter, we reaches -4, -5, which is cold for us as Iranians, not for some people who are used to colder weathers, such as Europeans or Canadians. But anyway, to cut the long story short, you see that here is the area of the city center of Tehran. The size is more or less 5 square kilometer. Speaking about the history of this city, Tehran was a very small village until about the 14th century. But later on, it became recognized as a city. So it started to be structured and it started to grow as a city with some kinds of constructive elements, including the royal citadel, also known as neighborhood residence, protective elements such as the walls that we had all around the city, and also the shopping things, which was the bazaar, which was the beating heart of the economy of the city. So this all happened in the years around 1524. So you see how it looked like at this time. Then it became recognized as the capital in the time of a king called Agha Muhammad Khan. So in those years, the city started to grow more quantitatively, as you see here. And later on, Tehran became a more expanding capital with new walls. So in this time, we had some modern signs entering the area of the Tehran. So it was more or less a cultural eclecticism that started to appear, some parts with traditional designs and some parts with modern design. You see in level C. And then later on, in the time of the king called Reza Shah Pahlavi in the years 1925 and onwards, it started to grow as a city without the surrounding walls. In this time, some administrative and industrial functions started to grow in the city center and actually in the center, in the city. And this is what we see at the moment from Tehran, which is a growing city, which as earlier my professor, Dr. Falamaki explained, it is now recognized as a megalopolis. So it is growing quite fast with not a very well-organized system. So you can see some images from a small city, a small village, or we can say a small city, then having more quantities, then having some cultural eclecticism symptoms, which shows that we have some traditional design, as you see here, and some kinds of more modern designs, such as the shapes of rectangles and others being added. And then later we started to move towards the modern life, as you see the starts of the growing of the grid and played network of streets and squares. And this is the current Tehran, as you see, quite dense and compact, with a population of over 10 million just in the city of Tehran. So if you are interested more about the history of this city and the kings and dynasties which strongly affected the context of Tehran, please see this slide later. And I just would like to say that Tehran, which is recognized as metropolis or megalopolis, as my professor earlier explained, with a population of over 10 million, was something like 5 centuries ago was known as a very small village that even its name was hardly recognized and was barely known by many designers, many architects, many urban planners, I can say. So it was not known by even general public something like 5 centuries ago. So whatever happened to the city center, which you might see here, only happened in more or less than 5 centuries. So this map, which I created on the Google map, is the map of the streets and squares, as you see here. And here is the bazaar that we still have that. And here is the Royal Citadel, or also known as Arc. So the structure, some elements of the structural of the past Tehran still continue to exist, but it is not well organized anymore. And it is just a huge interweaving of these contexts in the city center. So just some images, some further maps, as you see, of the squares and streets, as you see here. The main streets, as you see, it's a grid and plate system of networks. So it doesn't look like the spontaneous and organic design which used to exist in old Tehran. So at the moment, as I said, it's quite compact and dense. You see the high volume of traffic, even at night, even until 1 a.m. And the construction has continued up to the minimum limits of the natural structures. The image, as you might see here, is a river valley that we have in Tehran. And as you see, the constructions continues up to completely, I can say, the edge of the river. Shifting to my other context, which is the city of Belfast. So shifting from Middle Eastern country to a Western country. So as you know, UK continues 4 estates, or I can say 4 parts, including England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And Belfast is located in the Northern Ireland. If you feel interested about further details of this city and what's going on about this city, you might be interested to use this map. I just click it, you might see it is a kind of interactive map. So if you want to see further details about the city center, how it works, just click on that button, the arrow button, and you see it's going to be an interactive land use map. So you can clearly choose the part that you would like to see. However, I just would like to say something. Please remember that this they are quite strict about the copyright. So please remember to include it wherever you are going to use it. And you might need to ask for the official permission as well. They are quite strict about it. So as you see here, when we have the city, we can, for example, select the city center. So you can see its location, you can see hills. So it's an interactive map. So if you feel interested to learn further about this city, please use this link. And okay, this is the area of the city center. As I showed you, you can compare it to the size of the whole city. And in comparison to Tehran with the city center with the size of 5 square kilometer, here we are dealing with something like 2 kilometers and 2 kilometers. So it's much smaller. So the two cities are very different in the scale, in the density, in the population. The population of Belfast at this time is 350,000. So it's much less population, I can say. density, compactness, and everything is much less in comparison to the city of Tehran. However, I repeat myself, we have lots of similarities in the functions, but their interpretations and their usage in achieving the age and gender inclusiveness is much different. Just for your interest, if you feel interested about the agenda and local development plans and interactive maps, please use these links in your future studies if you like. And as I said, the two cities are very different in scale and size, compactness, populations, weather and geography, Eastern versus Western style of living, and official standards. However, we have 8 categories in common, which I'm going to explain. These have been identified during my research. And the next step, which I'm going to explain, is how to understand the difference of the usage of them in achieving age and gender inclusiveness. So we have the historic elements. In Tehran, we have the Arg, as I said, some images of that. And in Belfast, we have the Belfast City Hall and the Memorial Garden, just located in exactly the city center. We have the shopping motifs. So in Tehran, we have the bazaar, which is more or less still the traditional design, and some kinds of traditional motifs being added to the paintings, decorations, the paths in a more kinds of curved and organic and spontaneous design. Still, we have them. And here we have shopping stores, such as which is called Victoria Square, and we have shopping streets as well in their neighborhoods. So we have a combination of indoor and outdoor shopping in the Belfast. We have religious buildings. In Tehran, we have the mosques at the moment. The majority of Iranians are Muslims. However, before that, we had the Zoroastrian. So we have the fire temples and some kinds of Zoroastrian-based religious areas as well. But here we have the churches. So the concept of religious things still exists in the city center, but the definition of them strongly vary. And then we have the residential neighborhoods. As you might see here, the quality of them might not be very good in the context of Tehran. And in the center of Tehran, more or less, the people from the moderate, or I can say low-income people are living. You can see from even the quality of the buildings. And here in Belfast, the residential areas are a combination of modern and traditional, high-rise and low-rise or medium-rise. And sometimes they follow the structures of the existing natural structures, such as the River Lagan that we have here. And then very similarly in the city center, we have the networks of squares and streets, but squares, as you see here, is more or less the intersections, junctions, or I can say the roundabouts in the Eastern countries. In the Eastern country, actually, I'm in Tehran. And the streets are sometimes the place for the people to continue their shopping activities and their business things inside the scope of the streets. But here the streets are a little different. However, we still have some streets which are based completely on automobiles in the West as well, but something like improving the culture of clean and net energies, such as the cycling things here. However, I would like to just note positive things about both of these two contexts. We have the squares and streets, which are the platform of the people to gather and enjoy the time outdoors for demonstrations, as you see, strikes, demonstrations, gatherings, festivals, eating and drinking in both of them, as you see. So the squares can be defined in both contexts as a place just for the transit of automobiles and also just as a place for the recreational aspects. So both of these two concepts exist in the two contexts that I have studied. And then we have the connection to the nature. Nature can be constructed, such as constructed landscapes, such as the green area and a park called City Park that we have in Tehran, or it can be less constructed, such as the paths that we have for pedestrians coming along the river, as you see here. And then we have the administrative and industrial buildings, as you must see here, in the context of Tehran, so which was added in the time that Tehran started to grow as a modernized city. And here we have, I can say administrative building, not industrial in Belfast. We have some kinds of offices, firms, and the city hall, and we have some offices to let, as you see here. This building is called Scottish Provident Institute, which includes offices, and in the lower ground, it started to have some shopping areas as well. So the concepts of administrative things have been inserted to the city centers worldwide. And the eighth item that we have in common in both contexts is about the recreational and non-recreational units, which are based on shopping. So we have some technical shops in Tehran in the area of city center, which is the business one. So it's not recreational, but here we have restaurants, cafes, and bars, as you see. So when it turns to the night time, it becomes a place for the people to come and enjoy. So the city continues to be a city for people at night as well as during the day. And apart from them, we have some items which might be different from one context to another. For example, we have the universities here and in Tehran and in Belfast. But for example, we have the landmark items, which are quite crucial and important in the context of Belfast. You see, we have the big fish here. Sometimes people come and take lots of photos with them. We have Albert Memorial Clock, which is the representation of the past. We have Beacon of Hope, which is related to Thanksgiving concepts. But here in Tehran, we have these statues and sculptures, but they are not a place for the people to gather. So they are not recognized as monuments. So sometimes we have the names very similar, but the understanding of the people and how they can attract people to the area of the city center is very different. So what I have done so far was that in year one, this is actually based on a 2-year research project I'm working on. So in the year one, I have worked about the bazaar, network of squares and streets, and also about the tools and technical shops. So I have used these methods. So you can see the direct appraisal, hearing from people, reading about them as well. And then I have taken picture and started to analyze these images, which I'm going to show you by the bar charts and Gantt charts. And then I have used the platforms of conferences and journal articles as a platform of sharing this for further developing that. So the maps that you have already seen were a part that I have tried to recreate them, find out which square is a roundabout, which square is, for example, is just a junction, which are still a gathering point of people. And I have started to make quantitative as well as the qualitative analyses as well. So for instance, I have made the categories of according to the age and gender indicator. So for example, I use all the images which I took from the direct appraisal on the site, which was based on the use of a common user. So I try to specify these people as the dots. For example, a woman on a vehicle is recognized as a hatched red circle, and then we have the children, for example, in coin colors, and then I change these images to these photos, which we only have the dots. And then I provided some kinds of Excel charts, and then I provided some kinds of diagrams to find out what they mean, where we have the children, and why we have the children in specific locations. So what I have done so far is more or less a kind of combination of qualitative and quantitative analysis in the context of Tehran, in the categories that I have showed you, which were streets and squares, bazaar, and also the shops. So another example, so a square, and then I have made a kind of images specified them as the dots, and then provided these photos, and then provided the charts, the Gantt charts, and then provided some further analysis of the overall ratios. Another example was analysis of people based on being pedestrians and on vehicles, because one part of achieving age and gender inclusiveness is thinking of people just as pedestrians, and then thinking of them as pedestrians with different age and gender categories. So I have made further analysis about pedestrianization versus being on vehicles, which are shown by dots again. And then I have provided analysis of them, made a comparison between the categories of streets and squares that we had, and then makes the overall analysis about them as well. Besides, I have tried to find out the key items of architectural buildings and also the urban buildings that we have in the city center. So I have tried to find them, all of them, in the area of city center with different scales. And then they were something around 230, as you might see here. And then I try to provide a new categorization system for them, as you might see here, which is not just the land use that we used to have before. This new land use system that I introduced is based on the uses that we have. So it is based on direct appraisal that I used in the ordinary time in 2019, when we didn't have any COVID things. So I made analysis of the currency of the I can say not current, of the usual condition of the city and made a new categorization of the land uses. And then, as you see, with a new system of land use, not with how it exists. And then I combined it with the street networks, and then I proposed a new system for the city. I'm going to cut a long story short. If you feel interested about these details, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I would be more than happy to share it with you. But this is the overall things I have done so far. So as I said, we had these 8 categories in Tehran, and I have worked on bazaar networks of squares and streets and this. So one reason of making this presentation was to think that if somebody is interested about working bazaar, squares, working about the other aspects, arc or principal religious buildings, residential neighborhoods, because by reaching the time of the COVID things, people are not experiencing their usual life. So if I would make the direct appraisal on them, on the current situation, it's not going to be a data which can be extendable to the overall and general life of the people. So one reason was to ask for any kinds of collaborations or interest about the other aspects I haven't worked on so far. And the second is that as I said, I started to work on the city center of Belfast as well. I have made qualitative analyses, as you have seen, but about the quantities, by reaching the time of the COVID things, they are going to remain incomplete. And by the end of my second year in September, I might not be the postdoctoral researcher anymore. So it's not going to be put any further at the end of this year, but it can be applied as a kind of new opening for the future collaborations if anyone might feel interested. And also, I would like to ask for any other people who might be working about a similar topic in other cities, if they have found any interesting references, or if they have any idea about how they might be dealing about the same concept at the present time. That's all from me, and I hope you have enjoyed. If you have any questions or suggestions, please do not hesitate to contact me.